morning glory. Say there, stop that yawning. A brand new day is dawning. Pull up the shade and let the sun come through. Good morning glory. Spend about an hour underneath a shower and keep on singing like the birdies do.
Books of the Week is back on the air. The pundits were wrong. We're back. And I am Jeff Messerman in Cedarburg, Wisconsin, working for the Cedarburg Public working for the Cedarburg Public Library. And right across from me here on the virtual table is famed book critic, the book critic who can apparently, from our early conversation, get anything he wants at any time. Steve Donahue in Boston, Massachusetts. Hello.
Hello, everybody.
I know it's a good day because look, Steve, the sun's up.
Although we should probably clarify that the pundits were technically right about all the stuff they said, even the personal stuff. I don't know how they guessed it.
Somehow they knew. Oh my goodness. we discussed.
Are you particularly happy to know today, this morning, of course, the news out of Louisiana. The state of Louisiana now mandates the posting of the 10 Commandments in every public schoolroom.
Yes.
So that you can have your second graders asking Mrs. Willows, what is adultery?
And you know what Mrs. Willows will say? She's right here.
In lieu of Louisiana's ruling, I want to point out to our viewers that this show regularly breaks all 10 commandments on an episode-by-episode basis. I'm so fired up this morning, I may even venture into covering my neighbor's ass.
Uh-oh. And you know what that could lead to? And this is a good segue for our show. I mentioned to Steve earlier this week, hey, let's really trash it up this week. And so while we will not be reviewing this book, The Hayseed and the Hooker, adults only, please, we do have a stack of smoldering ash for you to enjoy.
Well, maybe not. You never know. You never know.
I want to bring up
and love stuff that isn't good. I'm sure that you have.
Absolutely.
Our listeners and our viewers on YouTube have already demonstrated their tolerance for garbage by watching this show. It's all about what you enjoy. That's it.
Steve has suggested when I said we do a trashy week, he said, hey, let's do this. I'm going to put you in the... And I almost agreed to it. I was so close.
I should point out that if that sign doesn't change soon, that is going to reflect a certain producer's reality.
Look, Mom, I can fly.
For a little while. Yeah.
Oh, landing. That's the hard part. I forgot. Absolutely. So, and Steve is right. I do want to point out that, you know, we don't judge you here in the library, I swear.
No, not at all.
No.
Not at all.
We want you to read.
100% sure that these things constitute low-hanging fruit. I think the main two picks that we have, I don't know what my producer has for wild cards. I think the main two picks that we have this time around might raise the eyebrow, the suspicion of less than quality stuff, because they both seem so conveyor belt. They both seem like a Mad Lib's version of this author's type of book. It seems like something that an AI could easily generate in both cases. And that raises the suspicion just a bit. Although when my producer told me for this week, how about we really trash things up? I said, oh, so you're going to record? That's what we do anyway.
The first 8 takes were just not usable. So there we are. Well, Steve, let's hit the ground. Let's hit the trash heap, the landfill running. What you got?
Well, we could start with nonfiction. This time around. Our nonfiction book is Right Thing, Right Now by Ryan Holiday.
I know him.
Who will be well known to a lot of listeners. He is equivalent to his show, his books, his series, his life called The Daily Stoic.
Yeah.
He would say that he has embraced the ancient Roman and Greek philosophy of Stoicism. I would say that he has embraced an extremely convenient 20th century version, a cod Stoicism.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure that our listeners are familiar with the basic outline of Stoicism as a philosophy that Basically, it's designed to cut down on worry by concentrating on the things that you can control, the things that you can change about yourself, and not so much to stress out about all the stuff that is outside of your control.
Sure. Good advice overall.
There are definitely good pieces of advice, both in the classic works of Stoicism by Seneca or the Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius, who we'll be getting back to, and who all the cod Stoicists refer to as Marcus, like they had him next door in the next booth at Wechtel.
Holiday really loves Marcus Aurelius.
Oh my God, he does. I keep expecting. I'm sure that Mrs. Ryan Holiday is just perpetually asking if Marcus does have a wife. He does have a wife, right? I'm feeling a little threatened here. Ryan Holiday has taken, I guess, what you could call the tenets of Stoicism and turned them, in my opinion, I know that we have listeners who will probably be big fans of his. I think he has turned those tenets of Stoicism and whatever complexity they may have originally had into an ongoing, extremely lucrative TED Talk that is aimed at a very particular audience. I don't think that Ryan Holiday has ever been writing his books for a general audience. I think he's been writing them for captains of industry, for the so-called, what an earlier generation referred to as the masters of the universe.
Sure.
I think he's been writing them for the kind of executive C-suite summit meetings that he is regularly called upon to speak at for astronomical fees.
Yeah.
And this book is, we'll get back to the people who are reading his books, but this book is more of the same. He picks a figure from history, Gandhi, Marcus, good old Marky. A couple of other people. This book has an example or two who are, what's the word again? I never encountered in a Ryan Holiday book. Oh yes, women. there are a couple of examples this time around are women. And the amazing thing is that the wonderful signpost signature imitatable behaviors of theirs are not to get to the kitchen and make me a sandwich. They are not to pop out 15 kids by lunchtime. They're actually women out in the world, which I might point out, cod stoicists do not approve of. But we'll be getting to that.
Steve, you have like 4 dangling plates right now we have to get back to. I'm worried.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, I did promise that this show violates all the 10 commandments, and here we're 5 minutes in, and my producer is already mesmerized by my dangling bits.
Well, Steve, I mean, last night you and I were sharing. We've been together for so long now.
Oh my God, doesn't it feel like that? Doesn't it feel like we've been doing this Shecky Green routine since the 1950s? Always with low ratings, always with flop sweat, always with producers right outside the door ready to cancel us. Doesn't it feel like that's always been?
It's probably our lack of stoicism, I would think, Steve. But anyway.
Certainly our viewers must feel like it's been a long time.
Perhaps even in this very episode.
This book, to get back to the book, it's 140 pages soaking wet. He picks a Wikipedia summary of some historical figure. He gives an epigraph for the chapter. He gives a summary. He talks about what Marcus has to say, what Marky Mark and the Funky Bunch the Stoic Bunch have to say about it. And then he moves on to the next chapter. It's incredibly light. It's incredibly quick. And it's incredibly derivative. There is not a single sentence in this book that Ryan Holiday has not used elsewhere.
Sure.
I always have the impression in the 21st century, we have a phrase that is incredibly overused, on the spectrum.
Yes.
I want to stress to our listeners that if you've ever tried to use that phrase on yourself, it's wrong. You are not on the spectrum. What you are is lazy or on your phone too much or a little bit stupid. But you're not on the spectrum. But there are people who are, and I often get the impression Ryan Holiday very seldom strikes me as being fully conscious when he's talking.
I watch his videos. I watch the Daily Stoic.
His eyes never look at what he's looking at.
Yeah.
His voice has no inflections. And every single bit of his spoken speech, of his written speech, every single bit of it is airtight, compartmentalized. You could take it out of where it is and put it somewhere else without changing anything. There's no organic flow either to his speech or to his writing. It's all little shiny bits that a minor boy has picked out and put here. It's Mad Lib stoicism.
It's funny that you say airtight, because when I watch his videos, I marvel at the fact that he actually never takes a breath. He has this weird run-on thing going, which is
that's another thing. That's another reason. I don't mean to toss off the spectrum bit cavalierly, but that's another thing, is that he doesn't seem present for what he's saying. He doesn't seem like he's actually saying anything. It seems like he's rushing to get something out before he's executed.
Absolutely. He tries to come off as a regular. I love when he tries to come off as a regular Joe, and he says, I came up this thing when I was walking with my kids on the field. I have a beautiful field. I live in this awesome pasture, and I'm walking in the field, and I was thinking about Marcus Aurelius.
Right. And in all of his shows and in all of his books, he has these thoughts while he's walking with his it's the birth rates children, never on the toilet. Which is where I do all my best.
Which, as we know. Yes.
Right. All of his so-called personal anecdotes, either in his books or on his YouTube channel or wherever, are all extremely impersonal.
Yeah.
They are the cod stoicist dream about when inspiration strikes a man. And of course, again, inspiration doesn't strike women. Men strike women. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
You might think, okay, he's writing this way.
Go ahead, take a swing. Take a swing, Steve.
You might think he's writing these things for the business suite. They all want to think of themselves as future emperors. The whole key to cod modern stoicism is not that Marcus Aurelius believed in it. It's that Marcus Aurelius was an emperor. And they all want to be emperors. They all talk about building their own empire. And what you need for your own empire is your own field, your own property, and heirs. You need successors. You need children. It's the birth rates. It's the birth rates. It's the birth rates. You might think
like him. That's an emperor, Steve.
But what this book, Right Thing Right Now, what it underscores that his earlier books did not, is contained at the very end of the book. What this underscores is that although I think Ryan Holiday is really in a kind of ironclad bubble in terms of what gets in and what gets out, he has been made aware that his books are most popular not with that C-suite of executives, but with an entirely different reading demographic. This is the first book he's written where he shows an awareness that he is incredibly popular with fascists. This is the first book where he has done that. And to give him credit, he does it in a good way.
Yeah.
We live in the 21st century. This is the age of the grifter. Ordinarily, a grifter would realize that he's really popular in an audience and simply become part of that audience. He makes it afterward to this book where he talks about caring for gay rights, where he talks about volunteering at vaccine clinics during the COVID pandemic, where he talks about caring for the environment. And again, all of it has a kind of beady-eyed, sweaty tone to it. Why would you need to write an end part to your latest book that reassures your reader in very solemn terms that you are, in fact, not a monster? Why would you need to do that unless someone has made you aware of the fact that you're the #1 author among monsters? That's the only reason you would need to do it. It's so revealing. Yeah. It's just so revealing. He must be aware of the fact that he is warmly embraced by every sweaty-faced incel fascist in the country. And he must not like that. And when I read that afterward, I wanted to say, rather than write a nervous afterward like this, why don't you give a little bit of that, walking in your own field, Henry David Thoreau with your children, not with the wife. She's at home.
Who? Oh, the wife.
Devote some of that thought to whether or not you're a useful idiot for the worst people in the world. Why don't you devote some thought to that? Maybe write your next book about that. You would not be able to Mad Lib stuff. You couldn't write it in a weekend. If Right Thing Right Now was not written in a weekend, I'm the czar of all the Russias. All of his books read that way.
He said in many videos that this was his hardest book to write. I remember seeing that recently. He said, "Oh, I've got note cards everywhere, and I haven't spoken to my family in months, and this one really took it out of me. Probably just that afterword took it out of me."
if just a word to you budding wordsmiths out there, if you have note cards all around you and you're describing your latest book as the hardest one ever because it took you so long to arrange them in the right order, that is not a hard book. That is not writing. You are not writing at all. It would be great if for his next book, I'm sure he has 10 in the pipeline, but it would be great for his next book if he could write a serious book about why he needed to write that afterwards.
Sure.
But I don't think he'll ever do it.
No, because this is his next book, Steve. This is his next book. So,
you can stop flashing that up, mister. Just because you gave it to your first wife on your wedding night doesn't mean it's going to work on me.
It's a hot one, man. And what a good time to shift gears into fiction, the fiction department, and the veritable queen of the fiction department.
Right. This is Danielle Steele. This is her new novel, Resurrection, which comes out, I think, later this month. Do you get?
Yes, I haven't got my. Yeah, without like clockwork, I set my watch to Danielle.
Well, this is another example. I mentioned Ryan Holiday just now that you get the feeling that he has a whole bunch of stuff in the the pipeline. And this is another example of that. Resurrection is, by my unofficial count, Danielle Steele's 140th novel.
Okay, that sounds about right.
It sounds about right, but it doesn't sound possible at all.
No.
I don't know. We mentioned this before when we mentioned Ms. Steele, but I don't know if this is possible. I don't know that it's been possible for a long time.
Yeah.
Danielle Steele, as Wikipedia rather ungentlemanly points out, is not a young woman.
Oh.
And it takes work to write a novel. If you're writing a novel on your own, it takes work to write a novel. It's unlikely to me that a woman on the doorstep of her mid-90s can write 4 novels a year. That seems unlikely to me. I don't mean to be a conspiracy theorist, but that seems unlikely to me. But we can proceed. I'm sure we're both gentlemen here. I'm sure
we better be, because we're being watched.
We can proceed as if she wrote Resurrection. Right?
Let's do that. Yes, that's why I love doing a show. It's like I always say, I'm going to go do pretend with Steve.
This is the story of a woman named Darcy Gray. She's approaching midlife. She's in her early 40s.
Mm-hmm.
She's a popular blogger. She has a blog called The Gray Zone. And she is perfectly, idyllically married.
Mm.
Her husband, Charles, is a department store zillionaire. He's suave. He's handsome. They're a power couple.
Did you just say a department store? Zillionaire to department stores.
Zillionaire, yeah, like what's his name? The man that Princess Diana was shacking up with.
Oh, sure, yes.
Who the guy in charge of Harrods?
Sure.
Jodie Fayette, that's right. And they have 2 adorable children who are above average in every way. Their children are Penny and Zoe, and they are both off. They're grown. They're in their teens. They're off at extremely expensive colleges, which Darcy and Charles can easily afford. It's all just a perfect, wonderful, airbrushed life. And as I've come to realize, Danielle Steele likes to set up those lives and then just ride a haymaker through. She loves to just destroy them.
Yeah.
And that's what happens.
Yeah.
In Resurrection is a little bit of an overburdened novel. There's a lot going on here. But the main thing that kicks the plot off is that Darcy decides to do something that a heroine in a novel should never, ever decide to do. Her husband, Charles, is in Paris on a business trip, and she decides to surprise him there. She decides to fly to Paris without telling him ahead of time to show up at their pied-à-terre. That has never worked out well.
No.
I don't know why people do this.
No.
Venmo your receipts, give plenty of warning. You've got to, if you want to maintain the illusion, give plenty of warning. But instead, she surprises him. And I don't want to spoil the book, but it's not a pleasant surprise.
Uh-oh.
And it flings her into chaos, and she decides to retreat to the loving bosom of her daughter, Zoe.
Mhm.
Zoe is one of the two idyllic daughters. She is at the Sorbonne. And so she's right nearby. So Darcy goes to her, or wants to, but something gets in the way. A worldwide pandemic gets in the way.
Ah,
There's a lot of stuff going on.
this is Danielle's COVID book, eh?
Well, but it's not just a COVID book. There's a lot of other stuff going on
Right.
as well. So, I mean, there's even a slight attempt at making a little bit of a bit about what a successful blogger might be like. I am sure, 100% positive, that Danielle Steele, the human being, does not know the internet exists. I'm 100% sure. She certainly doesn't know what a blogger is. So, but there's a feint in that direction. But what happens in the COVID, the pandemic part of the book, is what was referred to in 2020 as COVID musical chairs, where suddenly you had to hunker in place where you were, and a lot of people weren't where they expected to be, and they just couldn't make do. They couldn't leave. Travel restrictions were down all over the world. So, and that's what happens with Darcy. She ends up hunkering down with a fading French movie star. Named, as one does, right? Her name is Sibylle. And okay, you think, well, this is an older woman, seen the world, a very Danielle Steele type character. I'm sure that I will not be the only person who reads Resurrection who wishes that this had been just Sibylle's story. She's infinitely more interesting than Darcy after 2 pages. But Danielle Steele has shown an invariable talent for not telling the most interesting story in one of her books. But you think, okay, they're going to settle down and she's going to come to terms with what's happened with Charles. But Sibylle has a hunky electrician.
Oh, no.
There's a hunky American. There's a hunky ex-Marine, no less, named Bill, who is also caught by COVID musical chairs. And the two of them are thrown together. Things take their natural course in a Danielle Steele novel. There are, I think, 3 things that you can expect a Danielle Steele novel to do.
Yes.
And this novel does all 3 of them.
Very good.
They are all satisfying.
Yeah.
Actually, Ryan Holiday's book does everything you would expect a Ryan Holiday book to do. So if you like what you expect his books to do, that you will get what you like. In a Danielle Steele novel like this, we want 3 things to happen. We want Sibylle to either have a wonderful death scene or have a revival of her career. We, of course, want Darcy and Bill to be happy. And we also want Charles to get his. And all of those things. Danielle Steele has all of those things in hand. So,
ask and you shall receive.
So if you said again that Danielle Steele is a staple at the library?
Very much so. And her readership is committed. And,
well, they should be on one level. I mean, I guess that's another way that we can look at the 2 main picks for the A and B block here is that they both give you exactly what you want.
Exactly what they want. Exactly, yeah.
So you will get copies of Resurrection and it will go out?
2, possibly 3.
I don't know why, but I find that so comforting. I don't know why. Maybe it's just that you find so few things that have been regular over 50 years.
Right. Well, and again, you mentioned the thing over 50 years because here is, let me give you a montage of Danielle's readership. They've all been on the show already today. So,
Well, and there's also me.
Oh, that's right. Let me see. Where is he? I've got him here. Well, I got a picture of your truck because I know it's been hot in Boston. So there we go. But yes, Danielle does very well. And
I would love to know. See, that's why it would be deadly for me to be at your information desk, because I wouldn't do any work any more than I did it when I worked in information desk in the bookstore. I would just pepper customers with questions. I want to know from the patrons who borrow Resurrection, do they feel the same way I do about Sibylle Carton? Do they want her story instead of Darcy's?
See, I was hoping you said that when she moved in with this fading French starlet, I thought maybe sparks will fly between those two, and Danielle will break the mold.
Yeah, that would also have been the last Danielle Steele novel that we talked about. There was also a path that diverged, and the more adventurous path would have been more interesting.
Yeah.
The only thing I don't know about this aging French actress, is whether or not she has been a character in an earlier Danielle Steele novel. I don't know them chapter and verse, and I also don't know if there's a Danielle Steele in-world universe. I don't know if that's the case. I get the impression that it's not.
Well,
but a Danielle Steele, an avid Danielle Steele reader would be able to know.
Your assignment, Steve, for next week is I need you to go through all 140 volumes and find the through line.
What I'm saying is, I think there's a chance. I say that Sibel's story would have been more interesting to read. There's a chance that Danielle Steele has written that story.
Sure.
I don't want to sell her short. That's all.
No, not at all. Well, there you go. 2 quasi recommendations, because if you're a fan of these authors, they're going to give you what
your producer says. He's not often right, but when he's right, he's right. We don't judge here.
Jeff was right. We have to fire this off. There we go. That's how he let everyone know.
As a critic, I walk the fine line. I never judge, but I often condemn. And you would think those two things could not be separated, but they can be. Absolutely. I am condemning how a thing is done, not how you like it.
Yeah, absolutely. That's almost a physical separation there. That must have taken you years to develop. Separating judgment from condemnation. How do you do that? I couldn't
do it at first. It took me about 6 producers to get it down.
Oh, Lord. Well, moving on to the wild card phase of the show. It's very nice to get Steve's rubbing commentary. I rounded up as much as I could that appeared on the surface to be kind of trashy or maybe disingenuously put out.
Let's see what we find.
And see what we find. I don't know what to make of this. I hope you've read it, because I never will. It's called Black Shield Maiden by Willow Smith and somebody else. What is this thing? What is this?
I haven't read it.
I guess maybe it's a fantasy book, it seems, but maybe not. Oh, no, it's a historical epic about an African warrior in the world of Vikings.
Right.
I think Roger Corman made this movie once, didn't he? I don't know. Right. What is this?
The tagline it has among the people who've read it and don't like it is woke Vikings.
I'm there for that. I want to see that.
It's the outrage online about the book. That's the only place I've ever encountered any mention of it. The outrage online is from the fact that in modern studio documentaries about Vikings, there's requisite one black Viking. In The Witcher, the adaptation of the Witcher novels, there are black people in the background.
Yeah.
In neither case would that ever in a million years have happened, but it's the Bridgertonification of popular entertainment, where we're going to imagine an alternate past that we wish we had. We wish we had an alternate past in which half the kings or queens of England are black.
And you know, Steve,
and people care about what they did and what evil they did or what good they did or what wars they waged, but nobody cares about any of the rest of it.
Right.
Because the rest of it is trivial. That is not the real world. But we wish we lived in that world. And I guess when you're dealing with fantasy, you can create a world like that.
But as you should know, that if you wish a reality hard enough, it actually becomes true. Here in 2024, if you wish for it, it becomes real.
In that case, judging by our viewers, we're going off the air.
Okay, people, don't wish so hard. No, bring it down.
We can explain.
That's become our tagline for every show now, hasn't it? It's like we watch a Star Wars movie and say I have a bad feeling about this. Ours is
I don't know the book. Sorry. We'll have to move on to the next one. It might not even be bad. It's not historical, but it might not be bad.
Sure. That's very possible. Like I said, there's a co-author as well. So I'm personally hoping that the first chapter says, and then Daddy slapped the stand-up philosopher. But that's just me. That's just, I don't know. But anyway, here's a guy who's been around for a long time. Different type of cover. Doesn't look like he's doing his usual icy serial killer thing. This is something called The Night House.
Yeah, I didn't understand the design of this one. And once again, I haven't got to it. This author has absolutely rabid fans.
Yeah.
For a long series that he wrote where you're supposed to mispronounce the name of the main character because you don't live in America.
Right.
Just like I believe you're supposed to mispronounce the first name of this author like you didn't live in America. But I do live in America, and we've got all the nukes. So his name is Joe.
Yeah, it's nice to have Joe Nesbo on our show.
Joe Nesbo. Okay? But the reason that I haven't made a point of beating a path to get to this book is because he has rabid fans, but his books have never done anything for me.
Yeah.
I'm not a big fan of the whole hard-bitten noir thing anyway, but
Yeah.
I some of it I have liked. His, no, not at all.
Yeah,
Not
absolutely.
at all. I wonder, is it possible that I'm so petty that the reason that I don't like them is because I'm constantly being lectured on how I'm mispronouncing the name?
Could that possibly derail your process?
I mean, could I be that small a person? And keep in mind, that's a trick question.
Well, let's strike up the band, shall we? Well, let's see if you can keep your pettiness in check for this next one, sir.
My track record is terrible so far. I've missed 2 out of 2.
I know you've done this one, so it's not a problem.
Yes.
She's saying more. Apparently she's saying more.
This is Jen Psaki's book, Say More. It's a Trump book. Don't be misled into thinking that it's anything else. It's a Trump book. No one cares about you at all, except that she has gone on from being the White House press secretary to being yet another whataboutism talking head. The people that 200 years from now, historians in other countries are going to say, they're going to look at the factors that brought down the American experiment. And rising neo-fascism, all those Ryan Holiday fans, they're going to look at that. They're going to look at the hyper-militarization of the police departments. No matter where you live in America, no matter how small your town is, your police department has a tank. Think about that for a minute. Yeah. Your local meth dealer does not need a tank. But you and your neighbors going out on the street to say, no, wait a minute, the facts are in. He didn't win the election. That needs a tank. But they're going to look at all those factors on what brought down the American democratic experiment. And one of the biggest factors is going to be a mainstream media that said, well, apples and arsenic, they're about the same. And Jen Psaki went straight from defending a sitting president to being one of these both sidesism talking heads, all of them doing the same Sean Hannity thing. I wish I had an example, but who uses writing utensils anymore? They all put a pen between 2 fingers. Like they just stopped their Edward R. Murrow writing of their own script. They don't know how to write their own name. They can't write any coherent prose. They're as dumb as goats in a field. But they all have that pen there as if they've just picked up from writing a script so that they can question you. They've got the pen right there in their hand. Please mimic that exactly.
And who knew Bob Dole? Who knew the Bob Dole approach would be so popular?
Bob Dole needed to do it. He needed to do it because he couldn't use that arm. It's all the same. They all have the same playbook. And every time a new person joins their ranks, I always hope they'll be a little different. And they never are.
Never are.
They're always exactly the same. Right down to the forced etiquette of these things, where at some point in every segment, the guest has to say, oh, you're absolutely right. They have to use that phrase, absolutely right. None of these talking head, bubble-headed bleach ones are absolutely right about anything. They wouldn't be absolutely right if you asked them to reel off the names of their ill-gotten children. The guests have to say that. And also, at the end of every segment, when the host says, thank you for taking time to be here with us today, there's always a long, pregnant pause. Because you have to say, oh, no, thank you.
No.
You won't get your $10,000 check and you'll never get invited back.
Well, Steve.
A giant bubble of nothing. It's a giant bubble of nothing. And the only reason I'm calling it a giant bubble of nothing instead of calling it a giant bubble of something else is because this is a family show.
Well, Steve, you're absolutely right. And we're going to move on to...
Oh, no. I did rather walk into that sausage pie.
Thank you for being here. Thank you for being here today.
But in my case, it's true.
You can take that to the bank, everybody. And I changed my drawl because I know Steve's in the middle doing a YouTube event, and Steve has a YouTube channel. If you can't get nearly enough of him here. And he's absolutely right. William Johnstone, who, or Johnston, I'm not sure if, I like Joe Nesbo, I'm not sure if he's a John Stone or a John Stone, but this is the Angry Land, and the land is angry. Yeah, did you?
Absolutely.
That's awesome.
As my producer hints, I am reading a lot of Westerns in June.
Right.
Ordinarily, I would not jump right at a William Johnstone or the 2 other people who are writing so-called serious westerns.
Yeah.
Westerns used to be everything. Now there's just a couple of authors that do them. I would ordinarily not have jumped at this book. I might have got around to it, but The Angry Land is just wonderful. Oh,
I'm looking forward to it.
And there is a secondary character. This author is pretty good at keeping his characters distinct. There's a secondary character who almost steals the book, and I love that.
Nice.
I'm always curious about it. I wish that I could talk with William Johnstone about what that felt like, because he's an old hand. He's written hundreds of novels.
Right,
so he must know that he's giving enough airtime to this character to lose the book to him.
Sure.
And he does it anyway.
Is he dead?
I wish that I could sit him down and ask him what that felt like, but we're not on speaking terms for sausage-related reasons.
Indeed. Did he pass away? And this J.A. Johnston is taking. I can't remember if he's one of those authors who's no longer with us in this area.
I think it was a father and a son.
J.A.
The mantle was passed.
Yeah.
So that, you've got the father's name as the brand, but
right.
I don't think he even. I think he is dead. I know for a long time he was co-writing these books. His style is, let's just euphemistically say, very minimal. So it would be easy for the son to take over from the father. And it does, I don't care either way.
Which my dad is.
Well, the son learned all the right lessons.
Yeah.
About plotting and pacing and whatnot. So
excellent. My dad had left me that legacy.
Now that I think about it, it's possible that if this was entirely written by the son, that might explain why a secondary character almost takes the book.
Sure.
Because that would not have happened. All right, that's interesting. That's the first interesting thing you've said in the entire history of the show.
All right, hold your ears, everybody. So
all the emails I'm going to get. You're so mean to
my people, you know what to do. And we have to end on a big one here, as if the Brat cannon wasn't big enough. Only Say Good Things, Surviving Playboy and Finding Myself by Crystal Hefner.
Oh my God, no. Oh, my track record's terrible. I haven't read this.
Here's her without the bar across her mouth.
Oh.
And she
Ryan
wrote a
Holiday
book.
prefers the first one.
Yeah. Yes, he would.
Who is she to Hugh Hefner? Is she a daughter?
That is a good question. It's an unflinching look at the culture of misogyny within the Playboy Mansion. There's news. A rare window into Hugh Hefner's final years and one woman's journey. 21 years old, Crystal Harris's life changed when she attended a party. Let's see. I'm trying to figure out who she is. She became one of his infamous girlfriends.
Oh,
I'm not
and
sure
then he
why.
married her?
And it looks like she rose to the top, number one girlfriend, and then half surprised her with a marriage proposal. And she said yes, and then wrote a book. So yes, there we are.
Yes, even though it's not that he was 65, it's that the gap between their ages was 65 years.
Yes, at that point.
Yes, anyway. But we are in the 21st century. We are being misogynistic knuckle draggers if we call her a gold digger.
No.
I believe that he was exactly what she pictured when she was putting little phosphorescent stars on her notebooks in high school. Yeah, I dreamed about marrying a 95-year-old.
I have a choice here: the Backstreet Boys or Hugh Hefner. I don't know. I'm not sure what to do here.
I haven't read the book.
Yeah,
well, I know it might be interesting. Glimpses into the Playboy Mansion are always interesting.
She says in the back, the Playboy Mansion was what I called home.
Good Lord. Well, now I want to read it. Tell me though, before we end, will that book go? Will it go out?
It's doing well. It's doing very well. I'm seeing it move. Absolutely.
Well, that's amazing. Well, you have a great library patronage there.
I really have kind of a dream pile here for patrons today. I mean, look at this here. This is so much entertainment, people. My God. So,
and it gives you all a chance to be a couple of steps up on me.
Rare, very rare. It doesn't happen.
Since we mentioned what great patrons the library has, do you perhaps want a segue here?
Well, I'll tell you what. We love our patrons so much. Wait, I even have something here. Let's see. Look at that. Look at the crawl, everybody.
Oh, look at that. Oh, no.
It moves and everything. I paid a lot of money for that crawl. So I need you to use it because I got to pay for that crawl.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have a Patreon. where you
There
can
it is.
feel free to support what you have just watched.
With your pocketbook.
Yes, yes. Should you have found what you just heard of value? You know what we should have done? We should have set up the Patreon under false pretenses so that you could pay to cancel the show. We'd be rolling in dough.
Opportunity missed.
Yeah, right?
I'll tell you.
Just like,
If you want more of her, if you want us to rip that label right off.
I'm assuming that the link to the Patreon will be right in the show notes for the video.
Without a doubt, click the link. There are 2 tiers you can support us at. Now, when I say 2 tiers, I don't mean the tears you cry when you watch the show. I'm talking about the tiers of support, TIRE. And this would be the initial one, which will have exclusive content, which hasn't arrived yet. We're waiting for it to be delivered from Zurich. But we're going to drop some videos in there that'll be stuff that Steve and I don't normally talk about on the show. And of course, you're all terrified now and hopefully curious.
Keep in mind, the money goes to the Friends of the Cedarburg Public Library. It doesn't go to us.
No.
And Jeff works for the Cedarburg Public Library system. So neither one of us is hurting for money.
Clearly, we're rolling it. I mean, look at this shirt. You think this is a 5 and dime? No, it's a 5 and 10. So there we are. And then there's a little higher tier. What you can do with that is the segment that just completed, the wild card segment. You could throw your hat or a book into that ring, and Steve and I will discuss the book, or at least the author, or at least the subject matter. I know Steve will have an opinion of some sort. I mean, you know,
generally do.
He even had something to say about her. So look at our girls today. Boy, are we in trouble. Woo, the women of books of the week. We're dead. So anyway, that's the Patreon, patreon.com/books of the week. What could be easier than that? A couple keystrokes away from supporting something that you love, adore, and believe in.
Is that the time?
Okay, let me put it this way. If you don't do it, I'm sending these people over to your house. And they have concerns and complaints. So there we are. You know, it's wonderful. As Steve said, all of the funds we raise on Patreon goes to the Friends of the Cedarburg Public Library. And we adore this group. I'm telling you, I see them. They're just hustling in here and they're getting the book sale going in our book. Steve, yes?
Speaking of hustling, one of them was also a longtime fixture at the Playboy Mansion. And it's not the one you think.
I'm asking around today. I'm going to get to the bottom of this, so I have to go right to the top. Books of the Week is the show. Thank you for coming, Steve. Thank you for your time. For the show.
What are you going to do? Exactly. It's a show.
Exactly. As we like to say, of all the shows on YouTube, this is definitely one of them.
This is definitely one of them.
Tune in next week if you dare. Steve, keep reading, read a lot, and we will exploit your reading appropriately. Take care, folks. See you next week. Cut.